So I was talking to an Aquarius, and I'm always so happy when Aquarius contact me and ask me questions like this because I know it's difficult for them. So I'm always like, it's great to see them stepping up, you know? And I'm talking about emotional. So Aquarius can step up in a lot of ways easily, but with emotion, it's not always the easiest. So I was talking to an Aquarius, and he told me one of the problems that he's having in his relationship is that he's in a relationship with a Pisces. And the Pisces wants more emotional intimacy. Okay? So he said that he Googled it. I love my Aquarius. He said he Googled it because he didn't quite understand what she was asking for. So I'm like, okay, that's what's up. That's a good start. And when he Googled it, he got a definition, he got a working definition, but he doesn't understand how to do it, ways to build emotional intimacy. So he asked me because he knows this is what I do. So I went on Instagram, and my girl, Sarah Kuborik, you guys know I check her page every day for cool things about therapy. She's called the Millennial Therapist on Instagram. And of course, she has some lists. And one of her lists was ways to build emotional intimacy. So I promised him that I would do a video because I'm always so proud of my Aquarius, especially my Aquarius men. I mean, I'm proud of everybody, period. But my Aquarius men, I know they struggle here. So I'm so proud of them when they're even willing to try, you know? So I told him I would do this video and give all the ways, because I told him about the list. And he wanted me to talk about, the list and some ideas about how to make it happen. So I'm going to do the introduction, and then I'm going to read our list and tell you what I think about it. I am Queen Osset Haru. Thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to anybody and everybody that you know. Everybody. Just give it to everybody. Also, please leave us a positive comment in the comment section. And if you have time, please stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to read other positive comments and respond to them. Likewise, if you want to get a reading done, please email me or hit me up on social media. All that information is underneath this video. If you want to become one of my patrons on Patreon, that is underneath this video. And if you would like to send me a donation or get some Ask an Aquarius merchandise, check underneath this video. A lot of good stuff there, okay? So let's talk about ways to build emotional intimacy according to the Millennial Therapist. So she said, number one, do meaningful activities together. So he wants me to talk about how to do this. She's like, okay, I get it, but how? All right, so do meaningful activities together. So most couples, they 9 times out of 10 are intimate sexually. Most couples will watch TV together, eat meals together, maybe go out, hang out, do things like that together, but they don't always do very meaningful activities. A lot of these activities are very mundane. So when she says meaningful activities, she's talking about like going to a workshop about emotional intimacy, going to and that's a big one, especially for this particular question. Going to maybe a spiritual ceremony, celebration, something like that. Other meaningful activities to do together, anything that's important to the other person. So, like for me, I like spending time in nature. So, a meaningful activity for me would be to just go to a place where there's water or trees or something like that, and maybe sit and hold hands and like talk about nature, you know? Another meaningful activity, get one book, one book about something that you're struggling with in your relationship, for example. Both of you get a copy of the book, read a couple of pages a day, and every day for 10, 15 minutes, discuss what you read and how to apply it to your relationship. Stuff like that. These things are very meaningful, and these activities are working towards bettering the relationship. So you're going to do mundane things, but add in some meaningful activities. Number two, be intentional about having conversations. I talked about in another video listening with intention. So with this one, you want to have conversations, but you want to make sure that you're listening with intention to each other. If you're not sure how to do that, watch the video that I have. I don't know who this label yet because I just actually did it, but it should say something about listening with intention. And I'm going like this in the thumbnail, listening. So that's the other one. So when you're having conversations, you're really listening to each other and not just listening to respond. This is a big problem in conversations. Offer thoughtful gestures. So a thoughtful gesture could be holding someone's hand. A thoughtful gesture could be giving them a card. Hallmark has all kind of cards for every occasion. Making them a card could be a thoughtful gesture. Bringing them one single red rose could be a thoughtful gesture. This really depends on the person. I really like stuffed animals, as you guys can see. And somebody sent me, as a matter of fact, a lot of people send me different things. And one of the things that was sent to me was this Harry Potter behind me, the Bowtruckle. My buddy Jim sent that to me. And this was a very thoughtful gesture because he knows I like stuffed animals and he knows I'm into Harry Potter. You know, it wasn't an expensive gesture. You know, if it had been, that would have been great too. But the point of the matter was, it doesn't need to be. If it's thoughtful, that's it. The person is showing that they know you, they care about you. And this can be platonic, it can be not platonic. You know, me and Jim are just buddies, you know, but it also can be something you do with your loved one. The next one here says, provide emotional support. Last week, I did a video about how to be emotionally supportive. And this is another way to build intimacy. But emotional support has a lot to do with talking, a lot to do with listening, a lot to do with showing up for the other person. So if you're offering them emotional support, by definition, you're building emotional intimacy. Share thoughts and feelings. So you're not just listening to them, but you're also sharing with them. And this is something that a lot of people, especially Aquarius and Scorpios, we have a tendency to be kind of secretive. We don't want to tell everything, usually because of the fact that people will get information and throw it back in your face. So this has to be done with somebody that you trust, obviously, but be open to sharing your thoughts and your feelings. And this is sometimes very scary, even with a person you trust. So that one is a real good one. Talking about how you feel, just about things in general. How do you feel about your family? How do you feel about that person? How do you feel about what they just said to you? What are your thoughts? You know, sharing that. A lot of times when couples are detached from each other, they don't share anything. They don't share any thoughts. They don't share any feelings. They probably, the couples that I've seen, they told me they were just like roommates. They never shared any more information than that. Practice non-judgmental listening. So this is part of listening with intention, not judging the person. Because one of the things we all do is when we feel judged, we clam up, or we back off, or we don't feel as comfortable. Some of these things most of us or all of us will do. So try to listen without judgment. I was listening to this woman talk about her husband's porn addiction. And she said when he first told her about it, she was in shock. And the first thing that she realized was that she had to listen and not be judgmental. Because if she was judgmental, he was going to stop sharing. He was going to shut off and he would never get the help that he needed. So she said no matter how it made her feel, because she felt awful about it, she felt insecure about it. But instead of letting him see that insecurity or judging him like, ugh, what are you doing? Why would you be looking at that? She responded to him with compassion and she wasn't judgmental about it. I'm like, wow, she did really good with that one, right? But that's how she listened. She was just like, okay, well, why? Just kept asking questions like, well, why do you do that? Oh, okay. And just kept on listening to what he had to say. And he said that her responses to him made him feel comfortable to share more. So in this particular case, if you can listen with a non-judgmental ear, you'll probably help the person and you'll get more information. Apologize when wrong. If you can't apologize when you're wrong, you're not going to get very far with building emotional intimacy, because the other person is going to recognize that when you're wrong, you can't apologize. You can't take the criticism. You can't, own it, And so that makes that person less likely to want to go down this rabbit hole with you, basically, because they know that you're not going to apologize. If I know somebody is not going to apologize, I'm less likely to even talk to them because I feel like I'm wasting my time. Be curious. You can build emotional intimacy by being curious about the other person or being curious about things together. Nobody has experienced everything in the world. Nobody has gone everywhere, done everything. So continuing to be curious and then find those things together is amazing, So that's another one. Like if you're both curious about the world, for example, so you go traveling together and discussing your experiences, that's definitely going to build that emotional intimacy. So talk about the things that you're both curious about and make a list and start doing those things. Validate their experiences. Even if you don't agree with how they handled something, you can still validate how they felt and validate the experience. And you don't have to go into a lot of conversation around it. To validate somebody's experience is just to let them know that you understand where they're coming from. You hear them and giving validity to what they've experienced. I'll never forget somebody trying to tell me what I experienced wasn't what I experienced. And I was looking at her like, I know what I experienced, boo-boo. That's one thing I know. I know what I experienced. And her trying to invalidate my experience made me stop talking to her. Now, this wasn't a lover. This was just a platonic, supposed to be friend. But that made me like, if you would invalidate my experiences, then that says a lot. You have some type of agenda. And you can't be somebody's friend and have an agenda for their experiences at the same time, especially in the case of this. And I was very upset about the experience. And you invalidating an experience I'm upset about? Oh, okay. Won't be talking to you anymore. Face conflict with empathy and openness. Whenever that person and you have a conflict, or whenever there's a conflict with just that person, they're talking about here to have empathy and openness. This is not going to be easy when you're in a fight with that person, but this is one of the times when it's really the most important, because you don't want to come at them in a violent kind of way that's going to further fracture the intimacy you spent time building. So you want to try to slow down. You want to try to come at them from a place of empathy. You want to try to be open about whatever is going on. You want to own your stuff. You want to, help them own their stuff if possible, and you want to have a reciprocal kind of conversation. So this one is going to be, and it says face conflict. So it's usually going to be something going on. So this is going to take for you to be patient, and you might need to step back for a second and say, you know what, let me gather myself so I can come at this from a place of openness. People often think they have to talk about something in that moment. Sometimes you need to ask for time. Sometimes you need to ask for time to get yourself together. Let's see the next one. Offer non-physical compliments. So another way for you to build up this emotional intimacy is to give compliments that have nothing to do with their body. You're beautiful. You look great in that. Those kind of compliments are really nice, but they're all physical compliments. How about telling the person, you're really in tune. You're really a good person. I love listening to you talk. I love your mind. I love the things that you come up with. I love your creativity. This is something that builds intimacy with this person because it's not just a physical thing. Notice sex was not on this list. And sex does build emotional intimacy. But this list is all other ways. Everybody knows sex. Everybody knows you can build it that way. But a lot of people don't know that that's not the only way. And the ways that she has on this list are really brilliant because of that. Practice vulnerability. So practice being vulnerable in situations with that person. I talked about earlier not really talking when I'm hurt. That's a time to practice vulnerability. If somebody hurts me, instead of not talking to them, what I should do is tell them what you did really hurt. That is practicing vulnerability. And I do that with people I really care about. Like with me and my daughter, I do that with her. Or somebody I'm really close to, I will do that. My friend or whatever, I will do that. But it's not common. So when you're dealing with the person that is your significant other, practice that vulnerability. Tell them when they hurt you. Tell them when you're hurt in general. Tell them about your feelings. Being vulnerable is about revealing how you feel and revealing what's going on inside of you. So practicing it means you might not be great at it, but whenever possible, give it a try. And one thing I learned about vulnerability is the more often I'm vulnerable, the easier it becomes. So if you're practicing it, it becomes easier over time. It might take a long time, but it will slowly but surely get easier. Try something new together. We talked about being curious before, so now you have this list of new things that you two can try together. I call it a bucket list. All the things I want to do before I kick the bucket. Okay? There was a movie called The Bucket List, and that's what they called it. So here we have two people who can make a list together and try these things together. It's building the emotional intimacy and it's keeping the relationship from getting stale. Be honest and assertive. I feel like you should always be honest, period. I feel like across the board, I spent too much time in my life in deception. Deceiving myself, deceiving others, not good. I recommend always being honest, but especially with the person that you're in a relationship with. Be very honest with them. Sometimes it's tricky to be honest because they might get mad at you for your honesty, but I would say do it anyway because at least they'll be able to trust you. If a person feels that you're being dishonest, you can't build emotional intimacy without trust. They're not going to trust you. So the more honest you are and the more assertive you are with that honesty, the more they're going to trust you. The last one says give space. You can also build emotional intimacy by giving the other person some space. And that might sound counterproductive, like, well, if I'm giving them space, how are we building? Well, if you're giving them space, that gives them time to do them, to get some air, to do whatever it is, especially people like me who need space. If you give me space, I come back that much better. If you don't give me space, I'm constantly pushing you away because I'm constantly trying to get some space. But if you give it to me, then I'm always coming back refreshed and I've had that space. I've also had time to do some things to come share with you. So it's not the same old boring conversation. It's not the same old. I've gone off by myself and did whatever, and I can come back to you and be like, oh, okay, well, last week I went to a party with so and so and, a painting with a twist party, and I have a new piece of artwork to share with you. Or I went to, a lecture with so and so or by myself, and I got some real interesting information for you. Now I'm coming back with things that's keeping the relationship fresh and continuing to build the intimacy. So these are some ways you can build, is how you can actually build it. So consider those ways. Some ways are going to be more applicable than others. Some ways are going to be more comfortable than others. But I thought those were good. I like those a lot. All right, so now we're going to take our time and we're going to look at some positive comments from the comment section. This one is from a person, their name is A Name Here. That's their YouTube name. Very clever. A Name Here said, I'm an Aquarius, and if I'm upset, I will go quiet. This is very Aquarius. Months to years, very Aquarius. Even if I still want to reconcile. Sometimes words stop working, and maybe that means things are over, but it still hurts. This is such an Aquarius thing to say. So much. It's like when we feel hurt, we clam up. It's a real like, difficulty to not clam up, to not back off, to not go silent. And in a relationship, especially if you can work it out, the best thing to do is to talk about it. So this is very, very Aquarius. And she says, sometimes the words just stop working. That's what it feels like. I feel tongue-tied in those moments. I always have a lot to say. I always express myself very freely, very openly. But when I'm upset about something or somebody has hurt me, it is so hard to talk. I just shut off. And later in life, I've learned how to talk through that, but it's still a work in progress because it's still not easy. Those words just escape me. Jay Wee. Jazz. What's up, Jazz? Jazz said, you chuckle like Meg the Stallion style. I gotta listen to her. I'm supposed to be doing a famous Aquarius. I do them sometimes, and Meg the Stallion is on the list. So I'm gonna do her next because I want to hear this Meg the Stallion chuckle. All right, guys, it's time for us to get going. So you guys come back soon because I got a lot more to say. See you later.